Los Angeles, and we have a great show planned for you today. The idea of a midseason tournament is being thrown around. Will a cash prize incentive be enough to get it done? Is free agency really the best way to build a team? We'll find out more from Money Moves with Bobby Marks. We'll look at some of the NBA win totals. Expect the Warriors to win over under 48.5 games this season. And Magic head coach JAMAHL Mosley joins the show to talk about being a first-time head coach and much more. So get to a TV because the jump starts right now, and we've got some breaking news for you. Welcome to The Jump. Now, I'll be joined by 2008 NBA champion Kendrick Perkins and our senior writer, host of the Low Post podcast, Zach Lowe, a little bit later in this segment. But first, major health and safety news respect to next season. Woj and Baxter Holmes report NBA will not require players to get vaccinated against COVID-19 this season, according to league sources. We now bring in our senior insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, and more on this developing story. Woj, can you tell us more about these negotiations between the league and the NBA Players Association?
Richard, listen, the NBA would love to have all of their players vaccinated, and they wish that the union would agree to that idea and that players would get vaccinated just like team officials are going to have to, and coaches and staff around players will have to be vaccinated this season. But that's continued to be a non-starter with the Players Association in their talks with the league, and there's still I think protocols and issues to work through before they get to exactly what this is going to look like this season. But I think the one thing that both sides know for sure right now, and certainly our reporting is confident is that the union is not going to relent on the issue of vaccinations, that players will not be required to have to be vaccinated. And so there's still going to be a number of players who are going to have to play this season under very different protocols, guidelines than their teammates.
Okay, now earlier this month, the NBA sent out a preliminary memo outlining protocols for unvaccinated players, including having lockers far away from their teammates, having to eat and fly and ride on buses in different sections. Could these protocols change as the NBA talks continue with the Players Association?
I mean, Richard, there could certainly be tweaks to them, but I think, part of that idea was for players who are unvaccinated to see how difficult their life's going to be in the NBA if they don't get vaccinated this season. And everybody went through it last season in terms of having to deal with all the protocols and how taxing it was throughout the league, players and staff. But certainly you have a much easier existence as a player in this league, being vaccinated, and certainly, all of the health considerations and the protections that is going to give you as a vaccinated individual in this country. And I think, but the message from the NBA to the players is, if you aren't going to get vaccinated, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to have a much tougher time just day to day on the court, away from the court, traveling than your vaccinated teammates are going to have.
All right. Thank you so much, Woj. Now,
Thanks,
some
Richard.
more big news from around the league as we bring in Zach and Perk. According to our Tim McMahon, the Rockets and John Wall have agreed to search for a trade partner. Wall will report to training camp, but according to McMahon, he will not suit up for any of the games as both sides mutually agreed on a bench role would not be best for him. So, Perk, what is your reaction to this?
Well, I already knew this was going to happen. I knew this when they drafted Jalen Green, and watching him in Summer League, watching him throughout the G League. And when you look at their young core with him and Kevin Porter Jr., both of these guys are young stars in the making. And I was like, where's John Wall going to fit in? Because those two guys both could play the point or the two. They could make plays for each other. And the direction that Houston is going in, they rebuilding. You got Christian Woods as well, who is young. So looking at John Wall, a guy who bounced back off of Achilles injury last year, who averaged 20 and 7, who showed flashes of the old John Wall last season, I know he wouldn't be down with the rebuilding stage. So if I'm John Wall, I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to go somewhere where I can win, where I can at least have a chance to compete for a title. The problem is that he's making a whole lot of lettuce, but it's a lot of teams. There's 3 teams out there that I think should really try to pursue John Wall. And that's the 76ers, that's the Clippers, and that's the Pelicans.
Well, look, what do rebuilding teams not like to do? Give up draft picks. And I think that's the issue the Rockets are going to face because, as Perk said, John Wall, by the way, still a solid player. I thought his comeback last year was a nice story. But he's owed $100 million almost over the next 2 seasons. To find a home for that contract, for that player, is going to be really hard, even though he is still a solid player. The big albatross contracts around the league have either been bought out, like Blake Griffin, for instance, or are on teams that don't really need John Wall or would need to be incentivized to take John Wall. I think Houston's in a tough spot here. Of the teams Perk just mentioned, what's up, Perk? Long time no see, by the way. Of the teams Perk just mentioned, Clippers, yeah, they could cobble together a bunch of picks, a bunch of players to get John Wall. I'm not really sure it makes any sense for them. The one that he mentioned, though, is the Thunder, just because they have $1 million in gazillion dollars in cap room. They're like a point guard rehabilitation farm system at this point. They might be realistic. Sixers, I don't really see it. It's just going to be tough for Houston to find a home for him.
Well, and this is the thing about John Wall, is that he can still play. Is he worth $48 million? Probably not. But I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree that John Wall can help you win games. And that's also a tough spot when you bring in a player that you know can win games, but you're also trying to develop young talent. And that extra 5 to 7 wins can also drop you from maybe the number 3 pick to the number 8 pick. And that's not what you want to do when you're rebuilding a team. But let's get to an interesting proposal from something in store next season. According to The Athletic, the NBA Competition Committee is discussing the concept of a mid-season tournament in the future, with the main incentive being a cash prize of $1 million per player. Perk. Now, as a former player, do you think that is enough money to get the player to buy into this midseason tournament?
Absolutely not. And look, I don't like the idea. Here's why. It's almost like an underground rapper, right? That has a solo album, a hit single that went gold, and then all of a sudden he remixes it like the NBA did for us the play-in tournament, adding like a Drake, and he goes platinum. Now you're trying to do too much. Keep the tradition. Don't shake your head.
No, I was just, you know what it was? I wasn't. Kendrick, hey, Kendrick, Ladarius Perkins, calm down. What I am trying to say is that you know what I was shaking your head? I was thinking, like, I don't know how Zach is going to follow this up, but God bless him.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, here's the thing. Like, we got to keep some type of tradition, all right? And, like, the 82-game season, okay, the play-in tournament at the end, yes, it's all good. But don't just water it down. Don't overkill the situation. No mid-season tournament. No, let it play out how it plays out. I love the play-in. That's enough.
Look, I'm willing to give this a chance because all of Adam Silver's wackadoo ideas, they seem to work. I'd give it a chance, but there are 2 reasons I've never been a big fan of this idea. Number 1, it's not a basketball thing. It's a soccer thing. It has no tradition here. It has no meaning here. I'm not convinced that teams or fans are going to care about it. Number 2, all the science, all of it, has said for years and years and years, 82 games is too many. We already tacked on a few for a bunch of teams in the play-in tournament. That's awesome. That's a hit. Let's keep it. Do we really need to get more games? More games for a tournament that maybe people aren't even care that much about? I'm open to the idea that over time, people will grow to love it. It'll get a cool name, and maybe it'll be at a neutral site for the finals. It'll get a little momentum. But it's more games, and as for the money, look, $1 million to the average player, to the non-star player. I don't know, Perk. I mean, you can speak to it better than me, but the average player makes $8-9 million a year in the NBA, or that's about the average player's salary. That's like 12% of that salary. If someone came to me and said, hey, play a couple games for 12% of your salary or whatever it is, I'd say maybe I would do it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's not. Look, without getting into ridiculous amounts of money, that's not chump change. That's a real amount of money. But will this idea succeed? I'm not sold.
Okay, look, there's so much to unpack here from both of you. Both of you guys contradicted yourselves. You talked about, Perk, you first said there's no tradition here. What are we doing? We just started the play-in game, and both of you talked about how you loved the play-in series. So why not try and add something new? Why not create a new tradition? Maybe there is something there. Well, you both of you can't be putting your one fingers up. I'll give you guys both an opportunity to talk. And secondly, the one thing that I also want to discuss is that for players, that $1 million, every time you got that licensing check, Perk, now that was free money. We view that licensing check as free money. Guys would go and buy something. It's probably not the best thing to just give a 25-year-old a check, but that extra $1 million, I don't care who you are. If you're making 50, if you're a league minimum guy, $1 million is nothing to scoff at. So I don't want to make it seem like that money isn't going to change for a guy like Russell who's making $50 million. Go ahead, Perk.
Well, first of all, how am I contradicting myself? And see, this is the problem that I have with you. Every time that you decide to put on a tie, you come on here with a whole different type of swagger. I don't know you. Today you're not RJ, you are Richard. So here's the problem that I have. I did not contradict myself. I said that I love the play-in tournament, but I said we have to keep some type of tradition. That's all I said, Richard. I didn't say that, the play-in tournament tradition. I said we have to keep some type of tradition. We seem like we trying to change it all the way across the board. And by the way, we talking about how guys value money. You just said like $1 million. You don't care if guys make this, they'll be in for making $1 million incentive. We're witnessing right now Ben Simmons talk about how he's willing to not go to training camp and possibly leave $8+ million on the table. So what are we talking about right now? It's a different generation. You know that, Richard. You know that, Zach Lowe. It's not the same. We value a dollar differently than this new generation of players.
Well, okay, so really quickly, Zach, are you for it or against it?
I'm against it. And let me tell you one thing, though, why I agree with Perk, which makes me uncomfortable that you're wrong and we're not contradicting ourselves. The play-in tournament the stakes are something I understand. The stakes are playoff seeds to get into the NBA playoffs, a thing that I understand and I know. This midseason tournament is for something brand new. Do I care about it? Do I hang a banner for it? Does it mean anything when there's an actual NBA champion at the end of the season? I don't know. But the play-in tournament, I understand it's new, but I'm playing for something old.
Okay, that's fair. Look, that point, I don't know what Perk was talking about, that point that you just make, Zach, there, I understand. But coming up, Bobby, we've seen a shift in the last few years when it comes to roster construction. In your eyes, is free agency still the best way to build out your roster?
No, I mean, the days of all-star free agency, of wooing Kevin Durant in the Hamptons and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant teaming up, I think that's over for right now. And when you ask, team execs, it's through the draft and it's certainly through trades. And what we've seen is a lot of extensions recently. And one agent gave the best line. He said, sign now and ask out later down the road. So when you look at why Luka signed that $207 million extension and why Zion will sign next year, it's basically to put a lot of pressure on their organization and then kind of canvass the trade market. But no, the superstar days of free agency, at least for now, are all but over.
Okay, with the changing landscape, are you expecting any big names to hit the free agency market?
Well, I think the two next offseason is certainly going to be Zach LaVine in Chicago. And that really is the only reason why, is because his extension is about $100 million less than what his actual contract could be. And I think we're all monitoring as far as what is going to happen in Washington with Bradley Beal. Extension eligible starting on October 1st, 4 years, $187 million. So those would be your two big names. But I think the interesting thing, out of the last 2 years of All-Stars, out of the 33 players, only 6 potentially could be free agents in the next 2 seasons. So we've got 27 players that are under contract for the foreseeable future here.
All right, Bobby, we saw a big salary cap spike in 2016, and that was part of what helped the Warriors sign KD. Are there any signs of a spike coming via the salary cap?
Yeah, I think we're going to look at it when the new CBA comes up in 2023-24. And also, we're going to probably get an infusion of more TV money that is going to come up. And I think that's where we look at for that next big wave of all-star free agents being out there. The Donovan Mitchells, the Bam Adebayos, the Jason Tatums of the world. Players like that potentially could team up, 3 or 4 years from now when they do become free agents. And this cap takes a huge jump.
All right, Bobby, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. All right, let's bring back Zach and Perk. Guys, you heard Bobby talk about how the market is changing, and for at least right now, free agency isn't the best avenue for teams to get better. Players are thinking money first and then playing situation second. Now, Zach, I'll start with you. With this new landscape, what does the future of free agency look like from your perspective?
First, I love that the league and the players union made it easier for players to sign lucrative extensions. I think that's good for players and it's good for teams. Second, free agency has only been the best means of building a team for just a few teams in the NBA. That's always been the case. Miami, Los Angeles, in theory, the New York teams, and then finally in reality, Brooklyn. The rest of the league, it's not a free agency destination. You're not getting stars that way. A LaMarcus Aldridge here maybe, but it's free agency has never been the best way to build a team for most of the teams in the NBA, other than those starry, cool places with beaches and nightlife and all that stuff. But I do think Bobby's right in the sense that you do see more teams that don't even seem interested in having cap space, but do seem interested in building a lot of tradable players. I look at what Boston did, extending Marcus Smart, extending Josh Richardson. They're prioritizing continuity. Let's keep what we have, prioritize and get some contracts that can make a lot of different trades feasible for us, figure it out down the line. So I do think Bobby's onto something, but sometime soon, maybe not this summer, maybe not next summer, there's going to be a Los Angeles or a Miami or a New York or some team in one of those glamour markets that sees a free agent class coming and lines up its cap space and does something big. I don't think we've seen the end of that forever, but something new is going on here.
Yeah, and look, you're right, Zach, and I agree with you and Bobby, but here's the point I want to make. I don't just think it's going to impact the free agency. I think it's going to impact the CBA, because watching what star players are doing with their max contracts like Ben Simmons and what James Harden did last year, and even guys like even the John Wall situation where franchises are being stuck with guys that are getting paid over $40 million and don't know what to do with them or can't get rid of their contract or they're disgruntled, right? So I'm looking at this right now and I'm like, shoot, the owners and everybody else are going to go into the CBA and say, hey, we're going to have these certain type of clauses. That's going to also affect free agency and things to that matter. So this is why I'm so big on when guys get their money to make sure they handle things in a professional manner, to make sure that they go about carrying themselves in a certain manner, especially when they get that big bag, because we always have to remember, certain guys paved the way for guys to get big money. And you want to continue to do your job as a franchise guy to help the next generation to continue to get big bags. So that's what I wanted to harp on, more of the CBA that's coming up more than the free agency.
Yeah, free agency should always be a complement to what you are doing. That is the issue. When teams try and say, we're going to get this in free agency, we're going to get this. Well, look at the Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, Bridges, Cam Johnson, key pieces to their championship run were all drafted. The Milwaukee Bucks, you had Chris Middleton, you had Giannis, all of these guys, key pieces drafted. And even if you look at the Los Angeles Clippers, when they got Kawhi Leonard in free agency, it's because they had a great team that made it attractive. The Brooklyn Nets, when they got Kyrie and when they got Kevin Durant, they had an attractive team, a playoff team for these guys to show out. If you're just saying that we're going to get this done in free agency, you are going to fail. You have to develop talent from within and then find talent to complement them. But
journey, we're going to enjoy this journey. We're going to embrace it, and I'm excited to do it.
Welcome back to The Jump. I'm Richard Jefferson. Now, that was Carmelo Anthony on First Take defending the Lakers' age, saying the Lakers have more knowledge than the whole NBA. Now, Perk, does the Lakers' collective wisdom outweigh any age concern for you?
Absolutely. And look, Melo was speaking that new language called facts. And I get it, right? You have half of the Laker roster that's almost eligible for the NBA pension, and you have some of them almost eligible for Social Security. I get all that. But when you just take LeBron James and Rajon Rondo alone, it separates them from the rest of the league. We talking about two of the smartest guys to ever play the game of basketball. And then you add Melo, you add a champion in Trevor Ariza, who played alongside Kobe Bryant, who won a championship, Dwight Howard, who's a champion. That experience is going to get them through tough games in the 7-game series when they're not making shots. They can hang their hats on outsmarting teams, even throughout the 82-game season. So when people start talking about, oh, they senior citizens and they're old and all this, I don't want to hear that, because all those guys look phenomenal. They're still in great shape. And by the way, Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis, they still in their prime. And have anybody seen pictures of Anthony Davis lately? He looks phenomenal.
I love Melo talking like a true NBA graybeard. These young kids, they don't know what we got up here. But I'm with Perk. Look, the Lakers, there's always so much noise. They're too old. Are they going to be good enough defensively? How's Russ going to fit? Do they have enough shooting? Is Anthony Davis going to play center? Why did they sign 1 million centers if Anthony Davis is blah, blah, blah? Those are all relevant questions. They're all going to matter at some point. But really the only thing that matters, if LeBron and Anthony Davis are healthy in the playoffs, they will problem solve all this noise away, and the Lakers will be just fine. We're going to scream and yell about the other stuff all season long. If those two guys, maybe the best player of all time and a top 10 player, a defensive player of the year candidate, all that, if they're healthy, the rest of it will work itself out, and the Lakers will be right there as the favorites or co-favorites at worst in the West.
Now, look, I have the Lakers second in the league behind the Brooklyn Nets. That's the one team that I have that's better than them. And Perk is already scrunching up his face like he just saw something poor. But my issue with the Lakers and their age is that you know that this is a long season. You're coming off two kind of condensed. You had a bubble season, then you had another season that was very, very unique. You're playing 72 games in a short amount of time. So my issue with that is that how is that going to work? I'm not talking about that they're banged up. I don't think that they're too old. I just think that we're talking about the third season. Now they're trying to get back on schedule, being somewhat kind of condensed and a little bit of funk to it. Perk, you got anything you want to reply to?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
I don't. You can transition because see, you know better. You know better, and here's why you know better. You played alongside LeBron James, and you know how much he puts into his body. You know that he has this ripple effect on everybody on everybody on the roster, that they follow his lead for as taking care of their body. Richard, you know how it is playing alongside of him. You know how it is to be on the team with him. He held you accountable. He held me accountable. I had the lowest body fat that I ever had in my career. So we already know how it goes. That's what I gotta say.
We'll talk about your body fat later. But Carmelo's only 5 years younger than our next guest, as we now welcome in first-year Orlando head coach JAMAHL Mosley to the show. Thanks for joining us, JAMAHL.
Thank you for having me.
Is that your new office? Is that your new office? You got your pictures hanging up yet?
No, a couple pictures hanging up on the other side of this.
Okay. Well, look, 16 years as an assistant. What does it mean to you to finally get that head coaching opportunity?
I mean, it means a ton. Just being able to see the work that was put in prior to this, and just all the coaches I've worked for, all the work that I've put in. It's been great, and to get the opportunity from the Orlando Magic and just having them believe in starting something new and fresh.
Now, you talked about some of the coaches that you worked for, George Karl, Rick Carlisle. That's a fun back-to-back. What did that mean to you to be able to work with them, and why was I your favorite player that you ever coached?
Just the knowledge that they brought to the game, the experience, the ability to transition things, the ability to adjust on the fly, just so many different aspects of how they coach the game it helped me out a ton just to see how they did things, went about practices, went about training camps, went about game adjustments. It was just fantastic just to learn so many things from them, as well as Byron Scott and Mike Brown, and then learning from my mentor, Tim Gergerich. It was just fantastic. And then you being one of my favorite players to coach, it's a toss-up. It's a definite toss-up there.
Yeah. Hey, Coach Mosley, big perk here, man. First of all, I want to tell you congratulations. Well-deserved, my brother. But I want to ask you a question. when you talk about having a young roster, right? And we know, like, having a young team, everybody have individual goals. And, you know, your job as a coach, one of your jobs as a coach is to make sure you put each guy in position to be successful, but also to talk about the team. So I want to know, what are your challenges that you're going to have to work on or try to establish in their locker room, or what you're going to preach to make everybody buy into your system and what you believe in for us developing a winning culture?
Well, the one thing that has been apparent with this young group already is how connected they are. You know, they want to see each other succeed, and they're willing to play with one another. They're willing to uplift one another. They want to play in alignment with one another. So a lot of times that's just me getting out of the way and kind of helping guide them so they can be the best versions of themselves. And the thing that you talked about with how do you do that as a team is doing the work every day. I don't think we can skip steps no matter how we go about doing it. It's doing the work every single day and believing in one each other and lifting up each other every day.
Now, you've been around talented players your entire career, but what was it like working with the USA Select Team this summer, getting the national team ready for their gold medal in the Olympics?
That was great. I mean, that was a coaching clinic for me, just to understand how great coaches did it, how they saw it, and just that sweat equity that you see popping here running now, just being able to just get on the court with these guys and communicate with them on what representing something bigger than themselves. I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from it, just being able to be on the floor and not take yourself so seriously, but putting the work in every single day to accomplish something bigger.
All right, now your Magic only won 21 games last season, and they haven't made it to the second round since 2010. What are your goals for your Orlando Magic this season?
The process, doing the work every single day. I think the results will take care of themselves. And I know we're talking about teams that are talking about this goal, that goal, but everyone is going to start off by doing the work. And that's all we can ask for every single day, doing the work, and the results will take care of themselves. I think that's got to be the key for us every single day. Guys lifting each other up to make the person next to them better, and then doing work every single day.
Hey, Coach, you know, you have a young star in the making, in my opinion, in Jalen Suggs. And, you know, I know it's going to be a lot of highs and some lows throughout the course of this season as a rookie. But what are your expectations for Jalen this upcoming season?
Look, Jalen is one of those guys that's going to continue to push himself. And my job is, and this team's job is just to continue to empower him as well as the rest of our guys to put in the work and get better every single day. I'm going to keep saying it, doing that work, because I think that's the only way that you can improve. That's the only way you can accomplish any goals that you set out for yourself, is by walking in the gym daily and trying to work yourself to get better.
Well, Jamal, I just want to say congratulations. I've known you for those entire 16 years that you were in the league coaching. We used to be at Gerg's camp. You used to keep me sane dealing with Rick Carlisle in Dallas. So I appreciate you, and this opportunity is overdue and well-deserved. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Coach.
It's really great for you guys having me on here. Thank you so much.
All right.
Now let's start with the Warriors, who anticipate the return of Klay Thompson in the first half of the season. Perk, over or under 48.5 wins for the Dubs?
Oh, this is a no-brainer. You got to go with the over. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson back, along with Draymond Green and the draft picks that they picked up. A healthy Wiseman who's going to come back on a mission. I'm picking the Golden State Warriors to be over 50 wins this season.
I want to be clear. No one should bet following advice from Perk or me. That said, I don't feel good about this pick. I don't feel great about it because I don't know when Klay's coming. I don't know when Klay's coming back. I don't know how long it's going to take till he's 90% of the old Klay we know and love. But I'm going over. And I'm going over because they wanted a 44-win pace last season with all the rigmarole they were dealing with. Are we trying to build our young players up? Are we trying to win? Who's healthy? Who's not? And I thought in the second part of the season, the last 20, 30 games, when James Wiseman was injured, they rediscovered the team that they're supposed to be, the team that they are. And here's a stat for you. With Steph and Draymond on the floor and no Wiseman, they were plus 10 per 100 possessions. That's superstar elite stuff. I think they leaned back into their ball movement. I think they're going to start Kevon Looney at center just like they did during that stretch and play the young guys a little more sparingly because the Warriors have one goal this season. There aren't two goals. It's not two simultaneous goals of develop and win. It's win. And if you can help us win, you're going to play. And if you can't, you're not going to play as much. And I'm really just crossing my fingers. I'm trying to speak it into existence. We're going to see Klay again. We're going to see Klay close to 100% because we need Klay Thompson. The NBA and the sports world need Pete Klay Thompson again. I miss him.
Go ahead, Perk.
Okay, two things. One, Zach said all that just to agree with me. That's the first thing. The second thing is this, right, Zach? Let me give you a little insight. That plus minus is the most overrated thing in the NBA, in my opinion. Like, we don't want to dive too much in plus minuses, okay? Like, give me the eye test. But with that being said, you still roll with me. So you right there in the books. It's going over 50 wins.
Okay, so we're going to look at the bigs there. This is one thing that I want to look at. I understand everything you guys said. I will take the over. But one of the things that you just talked about, Zach, and I have a question. They had the consensus #1 pick in the draft. And you are now just saying, well, we're waiting on Klay Thompson. We're going to start Kevin Looney. How do you not develop the future or the #1 pick in the draft that everyone had on their board? How do you not develop that?
He's going to play,
and
they're going to try and develop him. But he's going to play, and they're going to try and develop him. But just think about this. They took off last year when Kevon Looney started at center again. So let's say Kevon Looney, he's an 18-minute-a-game player. You got 30 minutes left at center. Some of that is going to be Draymond Green at center. Some of that might even be smaller lineups than that. How many minutes are there going to be for Wiseman at center? There are going to be some, maybe a lot if he plays well. And by the way, I'm not low on James Wiseman. I think he got a raw deal last year in terms of fan reaction to him. I think he was exactly what you should have expected for a raw, untested center who barely played college basketball at all. I think he's going to be a solid player. I'm just saying this year, given what Steph did last year, the goal is to win games.
I understand that, but I also look at DeAndre Ayton, and I look at the growth of DeAndre Ayton every single year. And then you get him into year 3, you get him into year 4, and now he has an opportunity to really contribute. And so you can't just put Wiseman on the back burner because now all of a sudden you have a 32, 33-year-old Klay Thompson. And so I'm really, really curious to see how the Warriors bounce that out. But let's stay out west with the Nuggets, who have the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic, on their roster, but will be without Jamal Murray indefinitely as he recovers from a torn ACL suffered back in April. Now, Zach, over under 47.5 wins for the Nuggets.
It's a tough line. Tough line, especially given that Michael Porter Jr. went like this last year and is probably going to keep going like this. And Aaron Gordon fit in hand in glove. They look like one of the best teams in the NBA. But without Jamal Murray, I'm going slightly under. I think they could hit this mark for sure because Jokic is that good. Michael Porter Jr. is just a monster scorer. They're deep and they have an identity. But I'm going slightly under on the Nuggets in a competitive Western Conference.
Yeah, I'm going with the over. I think the Nuggets are a top 5 team in the Western Conference. They showed us this last year. I was one of the guys that actually doubted them when Jamal Murray went down. I said it was over for them. But when you look at Jokic and what he did, tearing up the league, being the best big man in the game today, in my opinion, like long as you got him and he's in shape, you got a chance of winning every single night, especially in the regular season. And by the way, Michael Malone doesn't get enough credit. He can coach his behind off. So with that being said, I'm going with the over.
Ooh, I'm going to go with the over also. And the reason why I'm going to go with the over is for the individuals that you talked about. Nikola Jokic, he's in great shape, which hasn't always been the case. I played my last season in the NBA with him. Stop it, Perk. With him, with Jamal Murray. So I understand how important he is and how Mike Malone. But the Aaron Gordon and the Porter Jr., those two guys will be the determining factors in whether or not they keep that path. So I'm going to take the over. No one cares about what Perk is going to say, so we're going to go to break. And coming up,
absolutely. And look, Melo was speaking that new language called facts, and I get it, right? You have half of the Lakers roster that's almost eligible for the NBA pension, and you have some of them almost eligible for Social Security. I get all that, but when you just take LeBron James and Rajon Rondo alone, it separates them from the rest of the league. We talking about two of the smartest guys to ever play the game of basketball. And then you add Melo, you add a champion in Trevor Ariza, who played alongside Kobe Bryant, who won a championship, Dwight Howard, who's a champion. That experience is going to get them through tough games in the 7-game series when they're not making shots. They can hang their hats on outsmarting teams, even throughout the 82-game season. So when people start talking about, oh, they senior citizens and they're old and all this, I don't want to hear that, because all those guys look phenomenal. They're still in great shape. And by the way, Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis, they still in their prime. And have anybody seen pictures of Anthony Davis lately? He looks phenomenal.
I love Melo talking like a true NBA graybeard. These young kids, they don't know what we got up here. But I'm with Perk. Look, the Lakers, there's always so much noise. They're too old. Are they going to be good enough defensively? How's Russ going to fit? Do they have enough shooting? Is Anthony Davis going to play center? Why did they sign 1 million centers if Anthony Davis is blah, blah, blah? Those are all relevant questions. They're all going to matter at some point. But really the only thing that matters, if LeBron and Anthony Davis are healthy in the playoffs, they will problem solve all this noise away, and the Lakers will be just fine. We're going to scream and yell about the other stuff all season long. If those two guys, maybe the best player of all time and a top 10 player, a defensive player of the year candidate, all that, if they're healthy, the rest of it will work itself out, and the Lakers will be right there as the favorites or co-favorites at worst in the West.
Now, look, I have the Lakers second in the league behind the Brooklyn Nets. That's the one team that I have that's better than them. Well, and Perk is already scrunching up his face like he just saw something poor. But my issue with the Lakers and their age is that you know that this is a long season. You're coming off two kind of condensed. You had a bubble season, then you had another season that was very, very unique. You're playing 72 games in a short amount of time. So my issue with that is that how is that going to work? I'm not talking about that they're banged up. I don't think that they're too old. I just think that we're talking about the third season. Now they're trying to get back on schedule, being somewhat kind of condensed and a little bit of funk to it. Perk, you got anything you want to reply to?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
I don't. You can transition because see, you know better. You know better, and here's why you know better. You played alongside LeBron James, and you know how much he puts into his body. You know that he has this ripple effect on everybody on everybody on the roster, that they follow his lead for as taking care of their body. Richard, you know how it is playing alongside of him. You know how it is to be on the team with him. He held you accountable. He held me accountable. I had the lowest body fat that I ever had in my career. So we already know how it goes. That's what I gotta say.
We'll talk about your body fat later. But Carmelo's only 5 years younger than our next guest, as we now welcome in first-year Orlando head coach instruction. In your eyes, is free agency still the best way to build out your roster?
No, I mean, the days of all-star free agency, of wooing Kevin Durant in the Hamptons and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant teaming up, I think that's over for right now. And when you ask, team execs, it's through the draft and it's certainly through trades. And what we've seen is a lot of extensions recently. And one agent gave the best line. He said, sign now and ask out later down the road. So when you look at why Luka signed that $207 million extension and why Zion will sign next year, it's basically to put a lot of pressure on their organization and then kind of canvas the trade market. But no, the superstar days of free agency, at least for now, are all but over.
Okay, with the changing landscape, are you expecting any big names to hit the free agency market?
Well, I think the two next offseason is certainly going to be Zach LaVine in Chicago. And that really is the only reason why, is because